Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you've been well. Today we're out at the property, actually in my little orchard area, doing some testing, but showing you some stuff. Large part of this video is going to be on the BLUETTI AC200P. Hey guys, so actually real quick, let me intro this whole video. I'm going to be kind of jumping around all over the place, showing this thing in some real life use, showing it getting charged up and how I would use it, and then just plugging a bunch of stuff into it and showing you guys. I've done a lot of these solar generator reviews on my channel, and it seems like people always want to see it just plugging stuff into it. So this video, I plug more stuff into it so I can give you some real world taste of kind of like what you could do with it. So that's in this video, and yeah, I'll be talking about some specs and everything, but let me tee it up real quick first. So BLUETTI reached out to me. They've actually sent me some products in the past, and I get hit up by solar generator companies literally every day, and I turn down 99% of them. This one was interesting to me. It's big and it's beastly. I have a special use case for it when I'm building my house coming up. There's not gonna be any electricity there or anything, so I'm gonna use this to charge tools, power stuff. So I wanted a nice big unit with a bunch of capacity and a bunch of power. So longer term use, I'm gonna be using this probably to build a lot of my house. But before then, I wanted to test it out. So they sent this unit to me. They said, hey, would you be interested in this? And I said, actually, in a rare case, I would be interested in this. And I've been testing it out for a little while now, and this video is gonna kind of jump around back and forth to testing and showing different features and whatever, while I jump into the specs and talk about the power and all of that kind of stuff. I don't usually do a whole lot of just kind of reading specs, but I may do a little bit because people seem to ask for that as well. Anyway, real quick, let's jump back to the property, finish watering those trees, and then we'll jump back into some details. You guys said for watering this, I was just using this and some watering bins. You said I should get a little pump. I just got a little cheapie, just kind of to test it out. So this actually plugs into AC, so we're using this AC, and we're gonna water it. Actually, let me go back in time just a sec. So I bought one of these transfer pumps, and it has basically an inlet and an outlet, so it'll pump water from a water source. Comes with this hose and this little kind of filter thing you can drop in there, and then shoots it out. Actually had this hose hooked up, which has been sitting in my yard for a while, which had a leak, and it shot water all over this thing by accident, but not a ton of water, seems fine. Has all these port covers, which is nice. They're all closed except for this one, because this pump doesn't have an on-off switch. It just goes when it goes. So I'll plug it in here real quick and show you how it works. So then now that shoots water from there out, and it's has okay pressure. We can see the wattage that we're pulling here, 287, 288. So let's turn the DC on. Got a little bit of water up here, but let's see if it'll still charge right through that. Yeah, it looks like it is charging up. So I didn't think that would affect anything, but good to know. So then we have the intake basically coming out of here, out there. So to turn this on, we just, on the screen, AC output on. So I'll start pumping water, and it's pumping water over there. I'm gonna open this to release the air, and we're in business here. So this is how I'm gonna water. I'll probably speed this up for you guys. Well, that was a great success. We went from about 94% to 92% and drained this whole 21 gallons of water to water All of my trees. They're doing all right. I'm not having any kind of explosive growth or anything, but if you were curious about a little orchard update, here it is. Anyway, let's get into a little bit more about the BLUETTI AC200P. Okay, so some quick and dirty specs here. This is a 2000 watt hour. It's a big battery, and it's a 2000 watt. Has a 2000 watt inverter basically. I think it peaks up at around 4500 watts, so it can handle some pretty good surges. It's pretty heavy, about 60 pounds. Comes with these two handles here. Has a plethora of plugs, I think 17 total. So it's got 6 ACs, several, I think 4 USBs, USB-C, a 12 volt DC, your standard kind of cigarette lighter. And then it has this specialty port, which is 25 amps DC that requires a special adapter, but allows you to do some cool stuff that we'll kind of hop into a little bit later. Also has 2 wireless charging ports on top, so you can slam your phone right on the top. One of the cool things about this device, one of the unique things that you don't see a lot of times in these types of solar generators, is that it's using lithium iron phosphate battery composition, which is different than lithium ion, which is what most of them use. Lithium iron phosphate, or like Life PO4 as you may see it around, is kind of a more stable, safer battery technology that's not as widely used honestly in these kinds of devices. So the cool thing to me anyways, well, in addition to lithium iron phosphate being a little bit more safe, is that it has more cycles. It can handle more cycles before the battery kind of starts losing, not able to hold its charge as well. So a typical lithium ion setup that would be something like this could maybe have 500 to 1,000 cycles before it drops down to about 80% capacity. That means the battery can only hold about 80% of its original charge. This one claims that it can support up to like 3,000 charge cycles before it starts dropping down to 80% or whatever. What that means is a full cycle is a full charge and a full depletion of the battery. Some other things affect this, how fast you charge it, the temperatures that it's in, and whatever, but basically this will last a lot longer. Some people are confused about cycles, and it doesn't just mean that's 3 times that you plug this, or 3,000 times that you plug this into a charger. That means it's 3,000 times that it's fully depleted and recharged. That means if you use this down to 50% one day and then charge it back up, and then you use it down to 50% the next day and charge it back up, those 2 uses is actually 1 cycle. So assuming that you use this every single day from 100% down to 0 and charge it all the way back up, it lasts like 10 years or something, you know, before it starts dropping down, and it'll be good for far beyond that. So I only mention that because it comes up as a concern in some of my battery reviews, like I'm paying all this money and it only lasts this many charge cycles, and realistically, you're not gonna use that many charge cycles anyway, but this one can handle more. And the reason that makes this kind of unique is that it's a really good contender for like an off-grid setup. If you have a cabin or something that you're actually using this all day, every day, and you're using it a bunch, you don't really have to worry about it dying out on you as quick. Alternative uses are if you're building a van or a trailer or whatever, and you want a very simple power source, this is really good for that because, again, can handle all those charge cycles. And then a lot like the other units that are out there, it has its own MPPT controller, so you don't need a separate solar controller, you don't need a separate inverter, you don't need to worry about the connections to the battery, you got all your DC stuff here. So one other thing that makes it good for like an RV or off-grid build is a lot of those things use 12 volt. DC. So if you have your fans or your LED lights or whatever in the van or in your cabin, then you can do this. So it's more than just the USBs, it's more than the cigarette lighter, it's 25 amps. So they sell kind of a proprietary plug that I don't have, but you basically take that and then you adapt it to whatever you need, probably like an Anderson or something. And then you can hook that up to a fuse panel or directly into, you know, whatever array that you want. And then you can use this to power a bunch of DC devices in addition to having the inverter and everything like that. So it's a really good option for kind of an off-grid or van type setup. So that's cool. So what can it power? It can power a lot of stuff. I'm gonna turn it on and just start kind of plugging stuff in, and I'll show you a little bit of a close-up on the screen and go through some of the functions. The unique thing about this is it has a power button and nothing else. All the ports are on the front except for the charge input ports are on the side. So you have your AC and your DC charge ports. The DC charge port will accept solar panels up to 700 watts, which is pretty good. And then the AC input, it comes with a massive brick. Where is it? Here it is. A massive, grotesque, huge brick. But it charges at 500 watts, I believe. Has some fans in here and everything. So 500 watts is fast. That means it'll charge this device pretty quick. And the unique thing is that you can actually get 2 of these. I don't have 2 of them, but you can get 2 of them and charge it with 2 of them at the same time. So you plug one into the AC input, and then it comes with an adapter that you can plug the other one into the DC input. So the DC input accepts up to 700 watts, the AC accepts up to 500 watts, but you get 2 of these and you charge it at 1,000 watts. You can technically charge it even faster if you're plugging the AC in, and then you're actually running 700 watts of solar into the other outlet for a net of 1,200 watt input. So you can charge the whole thing in under 3 hours, which is pretty awesome. And if you guys have watched my other reviews in the past, you know that I really like having all the ports on the front. I like them all in one place. Even if the inputs were on the front, I would like that a little bit better, but having the inputs right on the side and everything else on the front is good. So, like I was mentioning earlier, there's only this single button. There's no other buttons to turn anything on and off. Everything is through this touch screen, which again, you probably can't see very well here. I'll show a little close up. But the main things you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna turn the DC on or off. That'll click on, turn the DC on, the AC on or off. I'm just gonna turn them all on for now. So this is a port that I love. I wish they included more of them. I think as devices advance and we see newer ones come out, we're gonna see more USB-C because it's kind of becoming the standard. What you can do with USB-C is basically everything. Every modern device you can charge off a USB-C. So what we have here is a little 13-inch MacBook Pro. We'll plug that into the USB-C. You can charge your cell phones or your iPads and a bunch of other different kinds of laptops there. So we got that. It's pulling, looks like 30, 40, 50, 52 watts right now of that. So let's plug some other stuff in. I got this. I like these combo cables. This actually has micro USB, USB-C, Lightning, and an Apple Watch charger. So I'm going to plug this into one of the ports here. Plug that in. I'll take my watch off, charge it. Here, we'll charge that. I actually have an iPad over here that I'm using for notes and just to refer to specs and whatnot over here. So I'll plug that in as well. So that's charging my watch, that's charging my iPad. So we're all going now. So now we're pulling, not much more, 60 watts. So also has a wireless charger up top. So let's just charge my phone here. Bloop. So that is charging. And I'll tell you in a second what we're pulling now. Actually, I was just using this O light, and I'm gonna take another USB. So there's 4 USBs, but I'll just lift this up and plug it in over here so you can see another USB port in action. So this one's actually the Olight Warrior Mini 2, which is nice. So let's see what we got. We're not pulling much, really. All these little DC USB devices don't pull a whole lot. So we're pulling a little over 70 watts right now. And I'm charging a bunch of stuff, and it's handling that fine. So let's go ahead and plug into this DC. I have a Dometic fridge over here, and I'm gonna hook that up. So let's carry this over here so it can reach a little easier. So we'll plug this in, and it's warm, so it's gonna kick on, and I'll just leave the lid open. I have my e-bike over here, my Specialized Turbo Levo that I've been meaning to charge. So I'm gonna plug that. We're gonna start plugging into some AC outlets. Okay, so my bike is pulling 180 watts over here from the AC, 100 watts from the DC, and we really gotta crank some things up here. So I need to make some dinner here. So I brought this kettle. We'll just set that up here, and I'll plug that into another AC outlet. And let's turn it on. We got this. Have you seen these? I just got at a local grocery store. It's Tapatio ramen. Now we're cooking. Okay, so anytime you heat with electricity, which is what this is doing, it's very inefficient. Pulls a lot of power. So this, now we got our AC cranked up to 1164. So this is no problem for this, no problem at all. Let's go get a hairdryer. So again, the devices that are really gonna eat into your power are electric heating devices, such as microwaves, toasters, whatever. Then we got a hairdryer, so we'll turn it on low, and that's bumping us up to 1600 watts. Now, I'm gonna bump it into high, which is probably gonna go over 2000 watts. So that was up at 2800 watts. And it gave a fault, but it didn't shut it off. As you can probably hear, all the devices are still running. So let's go look at this fault code here. And that went away actually. So, like I said earlier, it's a 2000 watt inverter, but it can peak up to 4500 watts, but you can't maintain above 2000 for very long. It's really just designed for a lot of times when equipment kicks on. Sorry, I'm gonna wait for this to boil. Sorry, okay, back from my little dinner break. We're still churning away. So that was just a little exercise to show you what kind of stuff you can do with it. And if you are curious, all of this stuff, this is not unique to this device. You can run, so you can output and input at the same time. So if I was charging this through solar, I could do the same thing while it's charging. If I was charging it through AC, I could do the same thing while it's charging as well. So, demo over. If you are, for instance, charging this from the car, which is a great use case, which we'll get into in a second, or if you're charging this from solar, this is obviously another great use case, which we'll get into in a second. You can do all of that and charge it and use the device at the same time. So I mentioned that because if you're charging this either in kind of an overland type deal where you're charging it through the cigarette lighter, which charges it pretty quick, you can continue using devices while it's charging and then just kind of keep that going indefinitely depending on the output that you're needing. Same with solar. If you have a appropriately sized solar array, then you can pump enough juice into this during the day and then run it all night and then recharge it the next day, and it's a really clever system. Or you can use both. If you're driving and you have solar, depending on how much solar you have, it might be faster to charge it through the cigarette lighter, which we'll get into some of that info. Actually, let's just get into some of that info right now. All right, so we're doing a little solar panel testing and charging. You guys probably know by now my buddy Rennie at Off Grid Trek, who's kind of the go-to guy. He sent me two 200 watt solar blankets. This is the newer model, this is the older model. I have them connected here in series. I'll dive into that in a little bit. Intentionally have these partially shaded. The sun's not perfectly overhead right now, obviously, as you can tell by the shadow of the deck rails. So I'm just showing you what some shading on some panels does. It's not overcast here, but it's kind of, I don't know, the skies aren't as blue as usual, so it's a little bit hazy. So I'm guessing we're not gonna get awesome, perfect results out of this. So let's see if we can see here. Okay, so we got about 74 watts of input, 38 to 40 volts coming in. That's good, means the system is charging. And then I'll show you real quick, pulling these out of the shade into the sun, which is what you always want to do with solar panels, if that's not obvious, but you really want nothing blocking the panels. But anyways, now I've pulled both of the panels off to where they're getting sun. These are obviously just laying flat on the ground. And now let's see what we got here. So now we bumped input up to 170 watts or so. Again, sun's still relatively low, not a great angle, kind of overcast, but you can see just having some of those panels shaded dropped 100 watts total off of the setup. So you really want to ensure that all your panels are getting full sun when you can. I just have my phone on me, so we'll just toss that up on top of here real quick. And now that's charging. you can probably see. So let's go. I actually got to make some breakfast, so I'll bring my blender out here and we'll just blend up right on top while it's charging. All right, as all my videos, this one will be a little random, but this is my little morning shot of health, my breakfast smoothie. I have this most mornings, and I'll just get into it because people will ask. I shook it up already, but it's milk, oatmeal, some cinnamon, some raw cacao, protein powder, this kind of cherry beet powder blend, spinach and kale, just like from a bag that I put in the freezer, and frozen blueberries. So it has a bunch of super healthy superfoods, so I kind of take it every morning, and I really like how it tastes, honestly. So this is my one healthy meal, and then I kind of forget about health after that. But it's in a NutriBullet. I like this because you just blend it and drink it right out of there, and you're not messing like a cup and a pitcher and all that stuff. So super easy. Anyway, I only talk about that because people will ask, but we have it plugged in here. Obviously it's charging right now, and I'll turn it on and we'll just blend it up. And this is really just to show that obviously you can charge it while using it, like we just showed with the phone. So you couldn't tell because it's so bright out here and it's just hard with the camera, but that was pulling about 680 watts when it was churning. All right, breakfast time. So another good way to charge it, which I utilize for all kinds of devices in a vehicle, this is on the F250, but pretty much every car is gonna have one of these. So your commonly referred to as cigarette lighter, though I don't think cars come with those anymore. We got one in the back seat here. One thing to note here is DC input source. So I went into settings, and right now it's on PV. PV stands for photovoltaic or solar panel, so we're just charging it on solar. The other one here, the other one here is car. Car is what you're gonna wanna put it on if you're charging it via car, obviously. That's one thing I wish this did have, was auto switching. Just would detect the proper source and then switch over. All right, so let's plug her in. Anyway, what we got in here is 108 watts pulling in from the car. This will be about the same for any vehicle, roughly. And man, like an idiot, I just hit my shin. You guys wanna see something? Graphic warning, I'm gonna show you some stitches that I got here. I just hit my shin right here. Luckily I didn't bust anything open. Anyway, some 3 stitches down here and another 8 up here. Any guesses as to what I did? Leave them down below in the comments. So real quick on solar, one thing that's a little bit different on this than a lot of other devices is that it requires 35 volts to start accepting a charge. What that means is, unless you're using a big residential, like put on your roof of your house panel, you're gonna need 2 panels at least in series. So I'm not gonna get too deep into series and parallel, but there's different ways to wire your solar panels. Very simple to do either one. Google it, tons of YouTube videos, but you'll need to connect 2 kind of standard panels or more in series to start charging this thing. So that's one thing to note. You won't really be able to charge this with a single panel. So once you get past that little hurdle though, it's great because it can accept up to 700 watts of charge through DC. That's a lot of solar. So chances are you don't have that much solar on your rig or whatever, but if you have an off-grid array, or if you have a bunch of solar panels on the roof of your car or truck or van or whatever, you may have 700 watts or more, but you can also supplement that with some portable panels that you lay out when you really want to charge or whatever. So it's good to have all of that solar input, because again, it makes this thing actually a pretty viable option for off-grid. So if you oversize your solar array, you have enough solar to really near that max of 700 watts, theoretically in 3 or 4 hours, you could basically get a full charge back into this thing. There's some things I don't love that I want to just point out real quick. The DC has 2 different options, photovoltaic, PV, or car. So it doesn't automatically switch between those. So that means if you're plugging in solar, you need to put it on PV. If you're plugging it into the cigarette lighter, then you need to select car. Otherwise it won't work unless you select the right one. So that's one thing. The good thing is with solar, when you have solar or car plugged in, the unit does not need to be on. You don't need to first turn it on and then charge it. It'll detect the charge and turn on and accept the charge. I only mention that because when you are charging it with AC, you actually have to turn it on first. Otherwise it won't start charging. Then once it's on and once it's plugged in, it'll do its thing. But if you don't turn it on and you just plug it into the wall, it won't charge until you turn it on. So that's one thing to note. A couple, they're relatively minor quirks, but I wish there weren't those quirks. But again, pretty minor. So let's talk a little bit about the screen. Once the unit is on, everything is done through the screen. So there's basically 4 main pages: home page, settings, data, and false. You're not going to use most of this, honestly. You're going to typically be right here on the home page monitoring stuff. So when we have solar input, it'll show the wattage right there, but if you want to get a little more into details and see the voltage and the current and all that stuff, you can dive deeper into that icon. Same with AC, you can dive deeper into that icon. So DC load as well, you can see we're pulling 66 watts right now, so you kind of see at a glance what's happening. If you want to dive a little bit deeper, again, you can. Same with AC, you can load, dive a little deeper. This is how you control the AC and the DC ports. DC is everything to include the charger on the top, the wireless charger on the top, all the USBs, the cigarette lighters. The AC controls the 6 plugs right over here. And to turn that on and off, you actually click it and you have a on, off, so you turn it off. I do wish this functioned, you could just click it and it turned on, and you just click it and it turns off. So one little extra step there. Again, kind of minor, but worth noting. Then we get into the settings here, and this is where you're going to change some of the stuff. You're probably not going to touch AC output voltage in the US anyway, or AC output frequency, but you can change that obviously to 60 or 50 hertz, 100 volt, or 120 volt. This is where you may change the DC input source. Right now it's on car. You just tap that to go into photovoltaic or solar panels. Then eco mode, we have yes or no. What eco mode means, I have it off for now, is that if it's on yes, if eco mode is on, then after, I believe 4 hours, if it's not outputting more than 50 watts, it will automatically shut down, basically go to sleep. But if it is consuming more than 50 watts, if you have it plugged into something that is continually pulling 100 watts, for instance, it will stay on even in eco mode indefinitely until the battery runs out. If you want it just on no matter what, you're like, well, I just want to keep it on. I may be pulling 10 watts, I may be pulling 0, but I want to keep it on the whole time. Then all you got to do is turn eco mode off. Then some other various stuff. I never set the date or the time. Language settings, I have English. Buzzer settings, I have on, just because, and that's basically it in the settings. Data, a bunch of stuff we don't care too much about, but if we want to get in here, you can see these fault histories. It tells what the fault is, BMS maintenance, product info, whatever. Again, you probably don't care too much about it, but it does also show the system temp currently. Then down into faults. Again, this is 6 pages of potential faults. So if you ever have trouble, this is a good troubleshooting mechanism right here through the screen. That is it. Love it or not, this is how this unit is controlled. So let's take some of this stuff off. I'm gonna keep everything plugged in because I'm kind of enjoying charging everything while we talk, multitasking. So this is the front. Again, we've covered this pretty in depth. It's kind of a nice, it feels good. The handles are a little rubberized up here. It does have, let me pull this around for you, 2 handles, 2 grips up top. So typically, that is how you will carry it, like this. And it is pretty heavy, again, 60 pounds, so may be quite tough for some of you to move around. I do actually honestly find it easier just to move it around by grabbing it underneath like this and carrying it like that. That puts it a little more comfortable carrying level for me, but I do bypass the handles. Then on the side here, real quick, these are the input ports. This is your DC input and this is your AC input. The DC plug is this, they call it the aviator plug, which I'll show here. It's actually a really nice plug. It kind of has this quick disconnect spring closure. So a very nice plug. It won't come unplugged on you or anything like that, but it is, for all intents and purposes, a proprietary plug. Now it comes with that plug, which is an adapter to an XT90, which is a little more widely used, but still not even a super common plug. But luckily enough, they do include the more common plugs, which is an XT90 to your, we'll just call it cigarette lighter adapter. Again, and then they include an XT90 to an MC4, which is a very widely used standard for solar. And then there's really nothing to note on this side except for a fan. Again, when this thing is under a big load or taking a charge really fast, then this fan will kick off to help cool it down, obviously. And then nothing really on the back side except some little bit of technical information. As all of these units, the bottom does have nice rubberized feet. So yeah, that is the BLUETTI AC200P. And so far I'm liking it a lot. Hopefully I showed it in use enough that you guys get a pretty good grasp of how to use it. Leave some comments down below. Let me know what you liked in this video, what you'd like to see in a future solar generator video. Chances are I'll keep on doing these because I nerd out a lot. What I didn't talk about earlier, but I talk about in most of these videos, is the reason that I like these so much is that I'm a big nerd and I have a lot of technology and I charge a lot of devices and I have gadgets and gizmos and camera batteries and drones and iPad, whatever. I charge a lot of stuff when I'm out on the road or whatever. So I use these devices both to run something like a Dometic CFX3, which is what I use all the time. So to run my fridge when I'm out camping or whatever and charge devices. The thing is, these are also great for a grid down scenario, preparedness, end of the world, that kind of stuff, or just a regular old power outage. Your power goes out, you have a bunch of prime rib in the fridge, but you don't want it to go bad. You can plug the fridge into this and charge it for a while. If you have solar panels, you could basically charge it indefinitely. Or if you have a CPAP or maybe some insulin in a fridge or whatever, that's another great use case of having a little Dometic fridge and one of these because it's more efficient, won't pull as much energy, will last a lot longer. So in emergency situations, you can still use this kind of stuff. Or if you just really need to emergency microwave a hot pocket, you can use this for that as well. So these devices kind of scratch a lot of itches for me. Overland, preparedness, end of the world, technology, all that kind of stuff. Again, if you're new to my channel, I've reviewed quite a few of the different kinds of these, different brands, different models, different sizes. So check out my channel for more. So I think I'm just gonna wrap it up right there. Thank you, BLUETTI, for sending this along. I will link this down below as well as everything else I talked about in this videos. Appreciate you clicking those links as always, because that's kind of how I support what I do here on the channel. And yeah, until next time, guys, take care. So now we brought the unit inside and I have it hooked up to this portable air conditioner that kind of vent out windows typically. This is a 14,000 BTU. So basically the biggest that you can plug into a normal house outlet. So let's turn it on and see what happens here. I'll keep the camera pointed here. So it's not very hot in the house, so I don't think this is full mode. This is like half power right now. So a couple minutes later still, it looks like we're pretty equalized in the high 1200 watts that it's pulling. So that's that. We'll do some more tests here in a bit. All right, so now I have my whole desk setup plugged in. While it's off, it's consuming 47 watts. So this is my tower, little speaker, and dual monitors. So let me kick this on here. and see what happens down here while it kind of kicks on. So we got a little over 250 watts now with both monitors on. Everything is kicking. We're booting up. So I'll open some stuff up and do a little stress test. So I don't really feel like loading up an actual program stress test. I haven't done one in a while. But anyway, doing a lot of stuff on the computer. It's only consuming 275 to 325 watts. So obviously you can easily run a desktop setup, though if you have a super beast of a desktop and like 10 monitors and whatever, maybe it'll put a little more load on. So anything that makes heat with electricity, like this little multi-air fryer thing, my microwave is like hard to hook up and stuff. So I'm just gonna run this, we'll turn it on, and just go to air fry, and we'll start that. And so that's right away pulling 1700 watts. So this is getting up towards the peak of what this system can handle. It can peak at, I believe, 4,500 watts and sustain 2,000, probably a little over 2,000 for a while. But something like a microwave, air fryer, things like that are gonna consume a ton of energy. That's why if you're at home and you run like an air fryer and a microwave on the same outlet, you may blow the circuit and have to go to your board and, you know, flip it back. So here we are though, running it 1700 watts roughly, and that's gonna cause the fan to kick on and everything. So yeah. Now here's a pretty realistic scenario. This is DeWalt quick charger. Let's pull in 300 watts or so, and then I got my phone charging on top, which is pulling another 10 watts. So with my upcoming house build, I'll probably be charging batteries. I got a little air compressor over here that will kick on. It's gonna get loud. So for tasks like that, obviously no problem. Can't do them all day, but if I have some solar panels out there, I'll be able to continue working for a while. All right, now here's one you don't see every day. Can it run my hot tub? Actually just kicked on. So this is an old like 5-year-old Groupon special, one of these like 4-person, but it really fits like 3 hot tubs. And it has one cycle that runs the heat and the jets at once. They're going right now, pulling 1,000 watts. I never hooked this up to a kilowatt. I kind of assumed it pulled more than that. But you can see it's going right now. So, if you ever need to run your hot tub, you could do that for just shy of 2 hours.